me. And if we had an investigation and that can be proven to me that is something, not proven, but just, so it seems like there's a pattern of that.
Right.
And it wasn't like one woman has said that and the other woman who said it is Leanne Tweeden, who I don't believe, frankly. If that can be proven as a pattern, yes, because to me that is aggressive, that is harassing, and then I would say absolutely. I think a picture, you can put your arm around somebody and your hand can end up on their butt or their whatever.
There would be, and maybe it exists, but I do think that there is obviously a continuum here, right? Where you go from groping and you could even start that before that. It's sort of just misogynistic attitude that is, that you articulate publicly or, I guess privately, but I'm not even talking at the workplace, because I think as you move into the context, is it at the workplace? What is the power dynamic at that moment? Yes, when you take a picture with a senator, I guess there's a power dynamic there on some level, but, in any context, when you're taking a picture with somebody, like, you don't need a power dynamic for something like that to happen. And, theoretically, I guess, it's less likely.
So that's the thing, right?
Like, I don't think if Al Franken is not a senator and he's taking a picture with a senator and he grabs her butt, I think that she would feel quite comfortable going like, I don't know what's wrong with you, buddy, but you try that again and you're going to end up, I'm going to have the Capitol Police come after you or something like that. Whereas that same woman, if she's not a senator and he is, might be like, I'm not going to get involved in this. Guy's a senator. So there's that dynamic. There's also leveraging this power dynamic, and then you start getting into like the Matt Lauer situation. Although his is much more violent and aggressive even than that. To me, that's the stuff as somebody who cares a lot about the women in my life and women not in my life. That's the kind of stuff where I'm like, Jesus. He's a predator. Matt Lauer should be in prison. Kevin Spacey is a predator. Harvey Weinstein is a predator. And again, some people start. Well, they should be in prison. They should be in prison. You said
they should be in prison. Here's the thing. Forget losing their jobs.
Here's the
thing. They should be in prison.
With that said, I also think that I don't want my daughter, or frankly any woman, but obviously we're invested in the people who are closest to but I don't want. The idea that women have to go through life with I got to be careful of anybody with arms. You know what I mean? Like the idea that this is a constant drag, hey, we're not going to do anything that could, that could really endanger you, but here's a 10-pound weight. Put this in your back pocket and just walk around. Like the idea that we're having, that we've got to tell 50% of the population, or we don't even tell them because a certain percentage of us aren't even aware that they've got to have this secret weight that they've got to carry around in their back pocket, which is just like, when I go into a situation where there's men, 1 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, I don't know, are going to pinch my ass. Yep. That's a systemic problem, and we are.
And these are things we need to have a conversation about.
But you know what? Here's the thing, and here's the counter argument, because I tend to think that for me, the reason why Al had to go was less on moral grounds and more on political grounds at this point, because it is in that nebulous area. Okay, so that's why I don't find your position on this to be particularly marginal. I think we're in an arguable realm there, particularly because there's been no, the guy, I don't know if he stopped 8 years ago. I don't know if he said oh my God, I'm a senator now. If he realized that a year into being a senator, I'm a senator now. I got to grow up. This 7th grade mentality.
That's the other thing. And you can bring context to this, Sam, in a way that I think not everybody can. You were a professional comedian. You were in these comedy clubs. You were in, on these sort of sets of TV shows that are they're sort of funny and have a sexual element to them, Sex in the City, stuff like that. So you tell me, I've just been a goofball my entire life. I haven't been a comedian. And I can tell you for a fact now, there are times when, friends of mine And I remember Ariana Huffington came forward and said this when the right tried to turn this into a Franken was groping her thing, where friends of mine, like, we just joked around with each other, and some woman would pinch my butt and I'd pinch hers. Now, was it necessarily, what kind of behavior was it? I don't know. Were there times where somebody probably did that to me where I didn't necessarily want them to? Sure. And you know what? I might have done something and stepped over the line a few times. I just think that making a sort of judgment call that is wrong, thinking you're joking with somebody, maybe they're not thinking the same way. We all make mistakes in judgment like that. That's different than pushing a button underneath your desk and having a door lock.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. And I think that, like, that's why the picture for me, the picture, I can, not appropriate, but the picture for me never was operative. It just, because you could see it was more problematic. And look, I know there is a male comedian who, when I've heard multiple stories when he is doing a scene with you, if there's an opportunity, he will punch you in your nuts right before, right as it starts.
You can't say that and not tell us who it is.
Yeah, no, that. I mean, I'm not going to, because it's all secondhand. But
how long has Seinfeld been doing that for?
He is the guest that will be following you today. Cliff, his name is Andy Kindler.
Kindler?
No.
Oh, Kindler.
But listen.
Now I believe.
But it was clearly like a dominance thing and a power thing, and right. But I don't want to get off track here. When it comes to Franken, I think we're going to need at one point some type of like scale of like where we can place these offenses.
That's right.
But politically, he clearly became a liability. And
I can accept that too.
And I will also say this. It's not enough to have a conversation. Like, the best way to have a conversation is, hey man, if you don't want everything that you have to go away, stop. Like, he's only pinching one, his interaction with these women is like, I just pinched them once. But they're going through life with this idea of like, if that guy is doing that to me, if Al Franken's doing that to me, like, what is their worldview? How much does it affect their worldview? How much does it affect their decisions on any given day? I mean, it was the functional equivalent.
No, and if to them it was demeaning, right? I just want to say quickly to them that this is a demeaning experience, and I can certainly see if it's one of numerous of those experiences. And I know, again, having enough women in my life to know how often these kinds of things happen, I can get it in that context too. Just Al Franken is another one of these people that took advantage because he could, and it wasn't a joke. There was the context, in fact, is bad. It was supposed to be a professional type picture, and he did it. So I get that too, and I guess that's why I wanted the investigation and I wanted to know more. You know what I mean?
Right,
I just
but it's not. Listen, here's the thing. It's not just that it's demeaning. To you or I, if that happened, it would be demeaning because it would be an aberration. Right? It would be like a blip, and we had this moment of being demeaning. But the problem is that particularly when you have a guy like Al Franken do it, it doesn't become demeaning. It becomes the structure. It becomes the reality and the baseline. I mean, I've told the story many times back when I was doing that sitcom called The Show, and I was hanging out with a bunch of black comedians and actors during the weeks leading up to that show. And I went home for lunch with one of these actors, and we pulled into his parking garage. Everybody's got a parking garage in Hollywood and in that areas, and not a particularly fancy building. We pull in, and as the gate opens up to go in, because they're all like, they have all got like garage doors type of things, his buddy pulls in behind us, and he's driving a Range Rover, which was the car of choice of everybody who had any cash at that time. This is 20 years ago. And the dude pulls in, he's like, oh, thank God you were here. I was getting followed again by a cop. And I was like, what'd you do? And he goes, no, I didn't do anything. He said, last week, over the past 3 weeks, I've been pulled over 4 times. Maybe it was 3 times. I can't remember what he said. I've been pulled over 3 times, and I actually called the LA Police Department. And I said, is there some type of sticker I can get that says this is my car? And the cop said, "Are you black?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, like this, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do." And so, I mean, just imagine the idea of like every time I get into my car, which, it's not for me necessarily, but for many people are like, I'm proud about it. I wherever I came from or whatever I'm doing, I can afford this car and I can drive down. And every time I get in that, there's also like, it's also a liability because it means that, cops have a license to come pull me over because I'm black in it.
And we don't ever get that. We don't get that.
We don't get that. I mean, if that happened to us once, like, Mr. Schecter, where did you get this car? You'd be like, wow, that was really uncomfortable.
No,
that was weird.
Americans and having to have conversations with kids that we don't have to have with our kids.
And this
is terrible. And I get the same thing when we're talking about women and harassment.
Yeah, I think this is a similar dynamic. The idea that like I can't take a picture with my liberal hero without getting my ass pinched. Like, what does that mean in terms of like what I'm going to have to deal with the rest of my life? And it's not just like that one moment. It's like he did it, and the frickin', that time I worked at that restaurant, like it was like my ass was an open, was the back of a barn. I mean, this is it fundamentally shifts your worldview for a lot of people, a lot of women. And I think like if the price is that we get it just a little bit too wrong in terms of certain individuals, like look, Al Franken could have stayed. He could have stayed. He made a decision because it was a political decision. Now, I think there is a problem where, where I think you get into a problem where you start actually punishing people in some type of institutional way without any type of due process. But in a political scenario like this, where he could have stayed in there,
right?
But he had to leave because his political
and he also
power
respected
was
enough.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos